Hello, David the Custodian here. I'm re-recording my original videos because I got better equipment, especially for audio. My first videos some of them were recorded on my phone, so the audio was barely loud enough to even hear. Others were with my desktop camera, so it just didn't do the trick. So I'm re-recording all of them so people can actually hear what I'm saying, which is probably a good idea for a YouTube video. So today I'm re-recording this one. I'm going to entitle "Worst to Best: Star Trek TOS Movies Rated." So there was 6 movies that were based around the original series cast, from the motion picture to the undiscovered country, and I'm going to put them in order from worst to best, starting with number 6 and going to number 1. And I'm not, of course, referring to the movie order they came in. When I say 6, I'm not saying 6, the undiscovered country 6. No. 6 is worst, 1 is best. So, for instance, let me just get into it. On my list, number 6 is Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. Star Trek V was just weird. The whole planet of galactic peace, which looked more like a prison planet for the galactic scum and villainy that migrated over from Mos Eisley or whatever, and it was just terrible. It was just a terrible place. Even the people who were running the place hated themselves. They were all just kind of sitting around drunk all the time and waiting to go home. Just bad place. I don't understand why that would be supposed to be considered a planet of peace or whatever. It just seems like a stupid idea. But yeah, and it goes from there into, hey, let's kidnap a starship. Why? Because we have to get to the center of the galaxy, because that's obviously where God is, and we have to find God. Oh boy. So they get to the center of the galaxy, and what do they find? An evil alien who is sending out some kind of signal to Cybok because he wanted a spaceship, because God needs a spaceship to escape his desert hell planet. Yeah, this was just bad. I've read some books that Will Shatner co-authored, and the only reason why I'm mentioning those is because they have a better tone, and that's because they had a co-author. It makes me wonder if they had a co-director or something along those lines, if this movie would have been a little tiny bit better, but in the end, it just is how it is, and it is not good. It is so bad that it's almost a joke to most Star Trek fans that I've talked to. So that's why it sits directly at the bottom. Number 5, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They tried really hard with the motion picture. They poured tons of money into it with new sets and new uniforms and all these kind of awesome things, and it just did not work. I know they wanted to show off some of these new things that they've done with that 10-minute long scene where they're floating around the refit Enterprise, showing off the new model that they've made for big screen. But oh boy, it's just boring. Honestly, it was cool at first. They could have cut it down to maybe a minute or two, and that would have been really cool. Like, wow, yeah, that's a really cool refit. I like that. But they just kept going back and forth between Kirk's face and the ship, and Kirk's face and the ship. And here's Kirk looking contemplative, like, yes, this is a good-looking ship. Like, really? It was just bad. I think I had nightmares growing up after the scene with the transporter malfunction. Just all kinds of stuff. But maybe I shouldn't have watched that scene as a kid. That's not the movie people's fault. But I tell you what, the whole movie just dragged. It was slow. I've seen people say that some of the later episodes were actually based on this idea of or actually there was one from the original series too, wasn't there? But it was based on the idea of that there was some kind of probe that was sent out and that gained sentience that came back looking for its creator. That's not a bad idea, and it worked all right for the episodes they used it in, but for the movie, oh my goodness, that was just too short of a premise. There was too many long, drawn-out scenes of, just visual stuff just to kind of show off what they could do. It just didn't hook you in. There was no action or dialogue that kept you entranced in what was happening, and it ended up being kind of boring. The idea was good. They spent plenty of money on it, but you can't overcome bad writing and bad editing. It just didn't work. So that's why it's number 5. At number 4, at 4 is, Star Trek 4, the Voyage Home. I actually really like Star Trek 4. It's kind of a break from the very serious kind of trilogy of movies that they had there inside of the TOS movies with 2, 3, and 4. The Voyage Home was kind of fun. There was lots of comedic elements that were really interesting. Double dumbass on you. It was just kind of like, really? It was just so stupid it was funny. And I think if you watch that movie with that mindset that this movie is kind of stupid and funny, it's fine. We can all chuckle when Chekhov's walking around with Uhura in downtown looking for nuclear vessels, or whatever the heck he said. I can't do the accent, so I shouldn't have even tried. But yeah, it's just funny. It's your classic. Here's future spacemen out of place in the past, and it was just fun. I like it. A lot of people think that the funness of it was out of place in Star Trek. I don't. I've seen, they did other episodes of the shows and stuff where they went back to the past. For instance, there was the 2-parter in Voyager where they went back to the past. That one was a serious one, and it was just kind of one of those ones that when I rewatch Voyager, I skip it because it's just kind of boring. So I think for this idea, it was kind of important for them to have a little comedy in this just to make it more interesting. The whales were cool. It was obviously kind of a political and ecological kind of statement, like, we can't keep killing whales like this or they're going to go extinct. And it, look at the humpback whale numbers. It worked. Cool. But I'm not really worried about that. Star Trek has a long history of making political statements. No big deal. It doesn't bother me. But it's only at number 4 because I think the top 3 are better than it. So number 3? Well, number 3 is number 3. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Now this one also gets a lot of hate from certain people who are fans of Star Trek. They say it's kind of weak. But honestly, any movie that came after Star Trek 2 was gonna look weak. I think it was a good movie, definitely. Christopher Lloyd, awesome. He made an excellent Klingon. In fact, Christopher Lloyd's Klingon, man, that really kind of set the tone for modern Klingons, honestly, or for what we know as Klingons going forward from that. Kind of the gruff, cold, give me Genesis, I don't care how I get it, I'm a Klingon. I'm tough and mighty and fear me kind of thing. That was kind of important. There was a little bit of comedy in there, not as much as Star Trek 4, but the comedy was still good, and it was put in just the right places, with Bones having, his mind scrambled and trying to find a transport in, a seedy bar, just all kinds of little things like that. That was kind of fun. It was just the right amount of fun to move the story along. And, I think all of us can agree with Kirk's sentiment near the end of the movie when he finally just had enough of Christopher Lloyd and booted him off of a cliff. That was just right. It was overall a good movie, but didn't make the top two. So let's move on. What did make the top two? Well, on my list, and granted, a lot of these picks are based on nostalgia. On my number two is actually the second Star Trek movie I ever saw, and that's Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. The Undiscovered Country was just fantastic. I think you had moved forward enough in time, in our actual time, where they had the computer technology to make good looking graphics. They had the film budget. They had the filming techniques that made it just right. Good sets, good costumes. Everything kind of clicked, even down to the blue Kool-Aid that they called Romulan Ale. Everything clicked. They had good, top-notch actors to complement the already solid original series cast. The story was compelling. It was there was a little bit of a little bit of a political allegory there again, relating to Chernobyl with the fall of the Soviet Empire. And it made it more relatable for the people of the time, because you could watch this and say, well, I've seen something like this happening, so it's very realistic. And it holds up. It holds up even if you didn't know anything about Chernobyl or the fall of the Soviet Empire. You could still watch this movie and enjoy it and understand, hey, these folks are in trouble. They have lost everything they needed to keep their empire going, and they need help. And so they've turned to their old adversary. So it works. It's really good. The kind of secret conspiracy that gets unveiled at the end, and of course, who can hate? Who can hate Captain Sulu showing up in the once hated Excelsior to help them defeat the bad guy? It was just fantastic. It was a really good movie. Solid number two. And if it wasn't for how awesome number one was, it would definitely be number one. But number one is the best Star Trek movie ever made, in my opinion, and that is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I mean, we see the return of Ricardo Montalban from rehashing his role from the original series as Khan, as the bad guy. We have this genetically enhanced genius against the best that Starfleet has to offer in a showdown. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Who's going to get a hold of Genesis, and what are they going to do with it? Oh boy. There's just all kinds of scenes in that movie that just make my hair stand on end with anticipation and delight. I mean, and there's so many emotional scenes too. I think I rewatched this movie recently, and one of the scenes that stood out to me was right after they had driven off Khan the first time, and Kirk turns around and there's Scotty holding his nephew in his arms. I've never understood exactly why he came to the bridge with his nephew. I think they've explained it some convoluted way, but it definitely made a good visual kind of a cue for what these people had been through and what they had, what all of these trainees had done, under this combat conditions. I choke up when I heard him say he stayed at his post after the trainees ran. Oh boy, every time. And then of course there's the classic emotional scenes at the end of the movie when Spock is dying. He says, I have been and always shall be your friend, I know that's not the exact wording. Don't crucify me. It's just a, paraphrase. And then the funeral scene at the end, it's a little cheesy, yes. But it is, the most important thing to remember is this is sci-fi. Sci-fi is just cheesy since the beginning of sci-fi. It's always got some cheese on it. So even though the funeral at the end was a little cheesy, it was still solemn enough to make you feel. It caught you right in the feels. And yeah, I think that movie was just perfect. And I love the surprise ending. You're sitting there thinking, well, Kirk's done it. He's headed home with his family and his friends, minus Spock. It's all good. And then we get a shot. And we hear the voice of the late, great Leonard Nimoy. Oh, boy. I think anybody seeing that scene had to know that there was another movie in store. And boy, was there. So, that's my favorite of the TOS movies. If you disagree with me, that's cool. Leave it in the comments. Just be nice. Well, I guess you don't have to be nice, but don't say anything vulgar. It's not appropriate. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and don't be afraid to come back. We love our subscribers.